Nice to be with you all. Hal, thank you very much for joining. I'm glad you were able to fit this in. Um, so, so I think we'll go ahead and get started, just in the interest of being respectful of everybody's time. What I'll do is just spend a few minutes at the beginning talking about just a quick background about the station and how we came to acquire it. And then Scott Miller, who's co-hosting with me, will fill us all in on the important information about the station, how to get signed up for the station, the costs of charging for charging, and any other questions, get folks' questions answered and that sort of thing. I'm actually just curious. I know for some of you, but not all of you, if you have an electric vehicle, I'm just curious if you could just raise your hand or just give a high sign or something so that we know. So Larry, you do. Aubrey, you do. Paul,
I have a
Al.
plug-in hybrid.
Great. Jerry, I'm not sure. Do you? No. Okay. And Jeff, you said you do not currently. Is that right? But you're in the business. You're on mute, so if you could just pop off there.
I go to auctions, so there's like 1,000 cars in a day. So I just wanted to keep up to see what it is, and the Teslas I'm pretty familiar with. Kind of like Hal has, and those superchargers are 15 minutes to go from 20% up to 80%. So I just wanted to compare the difference on a 15-minute recharge versus your 2.5-hour recharge at the difference in voltage. So it was a little intriguing.
Yeah, great. Okay, good. So no, it's good. I'm glad we have a combination. I can speak for Leslie and Zachary and I. We currently do not have an electric vehicle, although we have a gas hybrid. But I hope that in the near future, our next car is an electric vehicle. So maybe I shared that with some of you who are thinking about this and feel that this is a good opportunity to learn a little bit more. So just as I said, just briefly by background, the electric vehicle charging station that we have installed at the temple. First of all, this has come up a couple of questions about how much did this cost us to install, and I just want to address that up front, that we actually paid zero. There was no cost to putting in this station. We accomplished that in a few different ways. I'll just touch on very quickly. One is that Eversource, which is our electric company, has a program called the Eversource Make Ready program, where they cover the cost of preparing the space to receive an electric vehicle charging station or an EVCS. So they provided the cost of the wiring, the trenching, and the connection to the electric pole that we're getting the electricity from. So it's of course in their interest to get us using more electricity, so they're helpful with that. As a benefit of that, because they were paying for the trenching, which involves literally digging holes in the parking lot and across the dirt and across the island and all kinds of things, it brought a very significant cost savings, because we actually implemented this at the same time we were putting up the solar canopies. And as a result of that, the company that we were working closely with, Resonant Energy, saw a cost saving themselves to working with us in laying their wiring at the same time that the trenching was being done. So they had a kind of financial incentive, which led to some cost savings for us, because the hardware itself was funded, 60% of which came from a grant we received from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. They have a program called the Electric Vehicle Incentive Program. So again, they're trying to incent organizations to do the right thing and install charging stations and encourage all of us to drive electric vehicles. And so they paid the 60%. And then through a combination of Resonant's cost savings, they were able to kick in a big component of the rest of the cost of the charging station, as well as a couple of very generous donations that we received from congregants for helping with this. And so in the end, the cost to the congregation was zero. And so that in combination with installing this during the time when we were building the solar canopies really made it an interesting and very attractive opportunity for us. For those, given the COVID times we're living in, and that you may not have been to the temple recently, I just want to share a picture just to give you a sense of what we're talking about. So we're in this picture, hopefully you can see it, we're up in the far left corner, the front left corner of the parking lot. You can see the building in the far left here. And so we have one station that's installed between 2 dedicated parking spaces. You can see they're dedicated. They've got painted striping, green striping, which is the symbol for electric vehicles. They've got these electric vehicle indicators on the painted on the pavement, as well as signage that indicates that this is electric vehicle parking. And I'll try to just show you a close-up of that if I can. All right, there we go. Okay, so this is a close-up of the station itself. Extreme close-up, which will it doesn't give you too much perspective, but that's the station itself. The 2 ports on the left and right-hand side, that again is to charge 2 stations, and that just gives you a sense of what it is and what we're talking about. So that's it, kind of in a nutshell, about the station, how we came to acquire this. I think what I'll do now is turn it over to Scott to get into some of the detail about the station and the rates for charging and how to get signed up for those of you who have electric vehicles. And then we'll open it up for questions, pretty informal, and make sure we get as many questions, as much information out to all of you as we can during our time together. So Scott, over to you.
Yeah, hold on a second. I'm having some technical difficulties here. Wait a minute. I'm gonna move
No
that
problem.
over. And put myself here. And then do that, and I'm ready to go. All right. So I couldn't do a presentation without having a picture of my baby. So this is my vehicle, a Tesla Model Y, that I parked at the charging station. People who don't know, Teslas are the only ones that don't use the standard plug for all EV stations, but Tesla provides an adapter, which in this particular case, I proceeded to forget it at home. So I couldn't even charge because I didn't have my adapter with me. And I started at this company called ChargePoint almost 12 years ago. My first job was, the company had been granted $15 million by the federal government as part of the Obama administration. And my job was to give away 5,000 charging stations, which I thought was kind of the best job in the world. I mean, granted, there were no EVs on the road. Granted, people had to pay for their installations. I thought this was going to be great. And of course, it was, we were at the temple. I was involved in some things. I talked to the rabbi. I said, Rabbi, we have a chance to get a free charging station. What about it? And, he said, yeah, that's great. And however, who pays for the installation? Oh, you have to pay for the installation. That's kind of what bogged it down back then, was that we didn't want to pay for the installation, which is pretty expensive. The cost of the installation, if you just were to do it yourself, is something in the $7,000 or $8,000 range, maybe even $10,000. So what's really amazing is this opportunity we had to literally get the charging station 60% paid for by the government, 40% paid for by our vendor there, and have the installation totally paid for. It was a really unique opportunity. So Alan and a bunch of other people jumped on it. We got in collaboration, and we were able to get a ChargePoint charging station here. For people who don't know, ChargePoint is the leader in the US market. We have about 70 to 75% of all the charging stations in the US. We make not only this station, which is a relatively low speed charging station, we make home stations, we make very high speed stations that are like the Tesla superchargers, but for all the other cars, not just Teslas, but for the other cars. So we have a really good presence. And if you look, one of the very, very first stations the very first stations I put in Massachusetts as part of that free program was in Lexington Center. So those stations that you have in those Lexington parking lots, the older ChargePoint stations, are ones that I put in. And we actually had our launch event, the Massachusetts launch event, on the Lexington Green. The city or the town was really nice enough to provide us with 2 Minutemen who were flanking the side of the stage. And I actually got to speak in front. It was hot as anything. It was 102 degrees. I was sweating like crazy and could not believe that those 2 guys were, calm and looked like they weren't sweating at all. But that was literally the start of our Massachusetts program. That was followed up by going to Boston. We did one in Boston with Mayor Menino, who said, we're going to rename Beantown to Greentown, and we're off and running. Anyway, so this is what the charge point station looks like. I really appreciated Alan's pictures close up. People ask, well, how do I access the station? If you just try and pull out the charging cord, it won't come out. It's locked. And so the only way to access it is through having a charge point account, which is very easy. I'll show you how to do that, but very easy to do. And taking either an RFID card, which we can provide to you, or your iPhone or Android device, or your Apple Watch, or other type things like that. They all work and they all use the same thing, but you have to have a charge point account to start with. You go to the station, you hold your watch, or you hold your phone, or you hold your RFID card, and you'll hear a click. When it clicks, you'll basically pull out the charging cord, you'll put it into your vehicle, and then you're off and running. So it's actually quite easy. Most people who have electric vehicles have charge point cards. For those people who raise their hands if they had vehicles, how many people actually have a charge point account or a charge point card right now? Or maybe I should say, who doesn't? Okay, so Larry, we'll have to get you set up. Anyway, that's slide number one. Let's see, let's go to the next one. Whoops, hold on. There we go. So all the charging station, the software, the installation were no cost. We already talked about that. The member charging rates cover basically the cost of electricity, plus ChargePoint has a small transaction cost on every single transaction. And so the temple makes nothing on the electricity, but the temple doesn't lose any money. It was really important for everybody that we're not subsidizing, people's charging through our energy costs. We want to make sure that that was neutral. But we also put in a non-member fee such that it would be a little bit more expensive than for members. And we make a little bit of profit, or the temple makes a little bit of profit on that. Not that much. You'll see what I'm talking about. Now, we did discuss with the rabbi all this and came up with our set of rules based on what everyone thought. We had a big meeting to discuss this. The stations will be open between 6:45 a.m. and 10 p.m. If you're still on the station at 10 p.m., it doesn't automatically kick you out and call the police, but you can't start a charging session after 10 p.m. or before 6:45 a.m. The idea for that is we did not want people having vehicles overnight. Security people said that basically, that it's a little bit risky to have vehicles that you don't know overnight. So we wanted to try and avoid that at all costs.
And Scott, if I can just add to that, the 6:45 a.m. was chosen specifically to align with Minyan, right? So morning Minyan, which starts at 7. We wanted people to have time to arrive for that and be able to charge if they so needed. And again, as Scott mentioned, for security reasons and to be good neighbors and so on, we felt that 10 o'clock was about the latest we needed to have it available.
Right. The charging stations are available on Shabbat and holidays. We got that approved by the rabbi and the religious committee. The way ChargePoint charges is it's just like Easy Pass. You basically put an initial amount on. I think it's like $10 originally. And then as you charge, it basically reduces that thing down to a level of which I think is $2. And then it will automatically take money out your account when you get down to the $2. It has an artificial intelligence component that if you do a lot of charging, and not just at this station, but any station, it will take more out of your account. So if you're a very heavy user, instead of doing $10, it may do 20 or 25, and it does that based on your history. So it's not like you go on Shabbat and you'll get a charge on your credit card for that Shabbat. That won't happen. And I believe, I'm not sure, but I think the accounts are replenished on weekdays. So if it's over the weekend, it'll be Monday when it gets replenished. So as we said, the non-member rates are $39 cents per kilowatt hour, plus $1 per hour when not charging. So what does that mean? So if a non-member comes in, plugs in their vehicle and leaves it all day, but it's charged after an hour, they will get a notification that says you're not charging anymore. You're going to start getting charged $1 an hour, but starting in 30 minutes. So it gives people a chance to get out and move their car. But for those people who don't want to move their cars and want to keep it there forever, we want to have a reason to get them off. So we figured $1 per hour was the right amount.
Scott, I'm
Understand?
sorry.
Yeah.
Is that notification that they get when the car's charged on their phone? Is that how someone would know?
Yeah, it comes on their phone, right?
Got it. Thank you.
And so, you know, other people, if you know you're going to charge, you're pretty much full, you kind of estimate, you go out there and do that. But, you know, because of the 30-minute grace period, you don't have the, you know, the risk of getting, as soon as the car stops charging, it starts charging you that $1. It doesn't do that. So member rates, 29 cents a kilowatt hour, which basically is parity with what cost is. The $1 per hour still applies for them. And of course, the idea is there's only 2 charging spots. There's a lot more than 2 vehicles, and we don't want people just to run up there, plug in, and be able to stay for the entire day. We want to have them give an opportunity to somebody else to charge. So how do you get the lower rates? The first thing you have to do is get a ChargePoint account. So I can send this presentation out to everybody, but basically you hit on this link. It'll bring you to ChargePoint, and it will actually let you sign up. You don't have to pay any money until your first charging session. So it doesn't cost you until you have your first charging session, and then it'll probably charge you that first $10 after you've done your first charging session, and then you'll have the money in your account. But beyond that, you have to go to this link. So for people who haven't done it, I looked right now, I am signed up, connected with ChargePoint, and there's one other person signed up and connected with ChargePoint, but nobody else. So if anyone hasn't signed up and connected to ChargePoint, you're paying the 39 cents per kilowatt hour. If you have, you get the 29. So you have to go to this link, which I sent out an email. I'll send out in this presentation. Basically, it takes you to a place in the ChargePoint app, and it basically asks you a couple questions, and then you're all signed up and you get the lower rate.
Scott, what kind of questions would people need to answer about that?
I don't remember what they are, but it's nothing, you know, what's your name? What's your name? And that may be it. There's nothing that's, you know, I don't think it asks for your phone number. I don't think it asks for anything like that.
But then there's a verification process, right?
Well, actually, the verification process is people are automatically approved. And then the verification is that I look in once a week or so and see who signed up, and we make sure that they're Temple members. And we're also applying that to Temple employees as well. So you don't have to be a member, you'll be a member or an employee to get that preferential rate.
Right, got it. I see Donna has a question. Can we?
I'm looking at my app right now, and I'm looking at my account, but I'm not seeing any way to get to that link, Temple Amuna members.
No, what'll happen is if you click on that Temple Amuna link when I send you this thing, it will bring you right to the right place in the web app, and it'll do it for you. I made it very, very easy for you. So you just go, you know, any browser, click on that link, it'll take you where you need to go. And the reason I didn't, well, you can see what it is here. So it's chargepoint.app.link, and then there's a bunch of letters that I didn't want to make everybody copy down.
I don't know. I don't know how to get to that. I mean, I'm seeing it on your screen,
Yep.
but where I see it so that I can use it.
I'll tell you what, Donna, after this call, you and I
Okay.
can sit on the phone together and I can show you how to do it. It'll be really easy.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Will you be sending that out?
Yes, I'm going to send copies of this presentation out so you'll have the links. I've already sent out an email. I think we've sent out an email to everybody who expressed interest, and I can also send that out to people. Again, it has the same links on there.
Ah,
Okay.
thank you.
And I encourage, as I say, there's only 2 people signed up right now, myself and one other person. And I encourage everybody to do that. My last thing is to show you the activity so far. So we track all the activity, and there have basically been 5 people who have charged on the charging stations. When the charging stations got installed, before they got activated, they were available to charge vehicles, and there were basically 3 vehicles that got charged during that time. You can see those people being the ones that had the $0. So there was me, who I wanted to test it to make sure it worked, and it did. I basically used 1.5 kilowatts of energy. There were 2 other ones, and I have a feeling that those guys were part of the installation team because they were done a little bit early, so they wanted to verify that it worked. And then the other sessions have been done. There was a Ford Fusion that was there for an hour, and there was a Kona, Hyundai Kona, that on average was there for 4 hours and 51 minutes. One of their sessions was 7 hours, one was like 2 hours, and one was 4 hours. And so the average was 4 hours
Head
and
north
51
on Swan Lane toward Moreland Avenue.
Whoops. And so they're the one that got the largest charge because they actually used 86.9 kilowatt hours. And they actually paid the 39 cents. So that comes out to the $33.88 that they paid off their ChargePoint card. And if you look at the cost, the total energy was 94.5. It cost us about 29 cents a kilowatt hour. So it cost the temple $27.41. And the money that we made was $34.94. And that's primarily because this one vehicle was charging at that higher rate. If that vehicle was charging at the 29-cent rate, we would probably been right on the nose on 27.41.
Right. So I think in general, we're not looking for this to be a big money maker, but at the same time, we just didn't want to be, the temple didn't want to be subsidizing people coming and charging up. So this is designed to be break even, generally break even.
Right. So at the end of the day, we got the charging station for nothing, the software for nothing, the installation for nothing, and we're going to do member charging at a net zero cost, so that we're basically not getting any exposure to that, and then we'll make a little bit of money on the non-members who are doing it, but not that much. It's not going to be some major source of fundraising for the synagogue.
Right. I think it's also important just to point out, and then Paul, I see that you've got a question, but just to mention that the initial pricing, this 29-cent and 39-cent pricing that we've set up is designed to be very preliminary. And we said that after, I forget if we said 2 or 3 months, Scott, that we would relook at it and see how we're doing, just to make sure the numbers are all lining up. And then, of course, be able to make adjustments as needed. So none of this, one of the really nice things, and I can say this as the non-charge point employee of the two co-hosts of this session, that this system is extremely robust in terms of the ability to set up things that it can do, when it can be used, fees that we can charge, the ways that it can charge. It gives us a lot of flexibility. It's a really interesting and compelling system, and we feel that we are in very, very good shape in having installed this particular system. So we'll see how it goes over time and make those adjustments. So I'm going to pause there. Paul, I know you have a question, and then Arlene, and then Scott will come back to you. I'm sorry if I'm interrupting at the moment.
No, I'm actually at the end. So let's go.
Perfect.
Great. So I have a quick question and a comment. So Scott, with your Model Y, what are you getting, about 30 miles per hour of charge time?
Let's think about that. On one of these, yeah, it's about that. On one of these stations, yeah. Of course, if you do a supercharger, it's much faster. These stations are designed for workplaces, for places like our synagogue where people are going to stay for a while. It's not designed for someone who's going to come up the hill and charge in 15 minutes and get out of there. Yeah. And I forgot to mention, so ChargePoint has charging maps that you can, see on those mobile apps. You can see all the charging stations. We purposely decided to hide this on the map because we don't really want people coming off the highway and wanting to charge at our charging stations. Neighbors, not a big deal, but we really did not want to show that. So, if you go to the ChargePoint map, you won't see it unless.
No, it is there. It is there. I just opened up ChargePoint. It's there.
Is it? Are you sure?
I just opened it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll have to make sure if it's not all, I'll take it out. Okay.
Temple Amuna.
All right. Sorry about that. It wasn't there, so I will check on that.
So just a comment then, after based on your answer, Scott, of about 30 miles per hour of charging time, would it make sense, and clearly not in the time of COVID because we don't really have that many events going to the temple, but some way as we get back into having bar mitzvahs in person, family members driving from a distance away, some way to let family members know that it exists, because it may be more relevant to them than a lot of members who are there, on Shabbat for a few more hours or whatever, but have other options.
So, yeah, I don't know, Alan, what's your thought on how do we actually further promote it, except for the members whose friends or family are coming, tell them, hey, we got a charging station at our temple.
Right, it
And they
is.
can use it on Shabbat that they may not realize.
Yeah, Paul, it is a really good question. And in fact, I learned a little bit about this from Hal when we were talking about guests of members really being the people, exactly as you said, who are probably driving from more of a distance, almost definitely driving from more of a distance than members are, and may really truly have a need to charge when they arrive before they can head home or head to their hotel or whatever the case may be. So, yes, I think once we've got events happening back in the building and there are bar and bat mitzvahs happening, that we will want to come up with some way of communicating that to those B'nai Mitzvah families to share with their guests that this is an option available to them. Hal, did you have a comment about that? Otherwise, I want to ask Arlene.
You said it exactly. I think the primary reason for this thing is to accommodate guests and people who come, for a bar event, and that should be the primary reason. And in that respect, I think we who have electric vehicles should be sensitive to that. And if there is a event from where we know people are coming for whatever it is, a bar mitzvah, we should not use the chargers, but allow that for guests.
Scott, I would think you might want, if you guys send a notice, you might want to tell people that it's a charge point charging station, just so if they were slightly confused like me, as there'd be a vast difference to a Tesla supercharging station, because the charge point is charging at 30 miles per hour and the Tesla supercharger is charging at 600 miles per hour. So there's a vast difference in terms of time. And if it was a beginning Tesla driver, of which there could be lots of them, they might not quite realize one is 30 miles an hour and one's 600 miles an hour. They're just at vastly different speeds. So just the high simplicity, if it just said, this is a charge point charging station, that would be enough for a simple person to understand.
The interesting thing is that we track usage of our stations and what types of vehicles use our stations.
Mhm.
And the leading vehicle charging on our stations is Tesla. Despite the superchargers, people find them, use them. It's amazing. It's
They might not know in the beginning because it's a kind of new company, and not everybody's had a Tesla for a really long time. So there might just be a little bit of a learning curve.
true.
Okay, Arlene? Oh, you're on mute.
You'd think I'd have the hang of it by now.
No
The
problem.
table that showed the data on usage of the charge point charging station, the rightmost column was connected and only Scott's Tesla was connected. So I don't understand. You can charge without being connected?
No,
Scott, can you go back
connected
to that
is-
slide?
Yeah, connected is what I talked about. There were only two people who actually
Oh, I
had
didn't
connected.
understand that.
Yeah, two people had gone through the thing. And the other one hasn't used it yet. So,
Okay.
and by the way, I do suggest that people who have EVs get themselves connected, whether you're going to use it or not, because at some point you may need to use it and you want to not get charged that higher rate. So I was hoping to see a lot more people connect so that people are ready to go. Right now we only have two and only one who's actually used it. And
Thank
by the
you.
way, the question, I think I mentioned before, it says 0 fee for me. That's because I actually used it before the connection, everything was set up. So if I were to go and use it again today, I would get charged the 29 cents a kilowatt hour. No freeloading for ChargePoint employees.
I think also, Scott, the reality of just the usage of the building being so limited right now that I think it's a little bit of human nature just for people to not kind of sign up in advance of needing it. But hopefully when we're all back and people are there more regularly, that there will be that opportunity and that need for folks to get signed up.
Yeah, the killer for me is whoever owns this Hyundai Kona, and we don't know who that is. I can't look them up. I can't anything. They're paying much more than they should if they're an employee or if they're a temple member. If they're somebody from the neighborhood, that's what they pay.
Right. If they're not a member, that is what they would pay. So we can hopefully, as we continue to communicate about this among the staff and the membership, that if they are one of those, they'll get that more favorable rate, and otherwise it's actually correct as is. So we can see.
Exactly.
Great. Are there other questions that people have, either among those of you who already have an electric vehicle? Is this straightforward enough? Or for those who don't yet have one but are considering it, does this weigh into your decision making? Just wondering how people are feeling, having learned a little bit more now about how Temple Muna Station works.
I think the only comment I'll make, I think, which we've already sort of said, is I think it's great that the Temple did this thing. I think it's super. But I think mostly for Temple members, because we have lots of other options in town and we may only be at the Temple a short period of time, not that valuable, but really awesome for people coming from out of town who would be there longer and have better needs. So I think it's great the Temple did it, but we need to figure out how to get the message out there to people who are not members, who may be visiting, who will have more of a need for it.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, Paul. And it is, I think, from the standpoint both of being more welcoming, right, to guests and having this available for them and to know they have that sort of peace of mind. And also, a couple of people have commented to me that this sort of further emphasizes the Temple's focus on being environmentally conscious, right? That the fact that we have solar now and the fact that we're, in effect, encouraging electric vehicle usage by devoting to prominent parking spaces to it, making a charging station readily available, that we're sending a message that this is important to us and as a community, something that we're really standing behind.
No, absolutely agree. Thank you both for leading the effort. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. But I think you have a great point about really wanting to encourage guests and those who really truly have a need for charging when they get to the Temple to be able to do so.
By the way, there's another group that could be Temple members that would have a need for this, and those are people who don't live in single family homes. So people who live in apartments, it's not so easy to get the apartment to install a charging station. It's quite complicated and all that. So for those people, you might have someone an older person or young, whatever, who's living in an apartment who says, now I can get myself an electric car because I know every Saturday I can go to the Temple, plug in, drags them to the Temple for Shabbat services, and then get their full charge during that time. So it is a group that it's hard to serve, and it gives them an opportunity to charge.
Hey, Alan and Scott.
Hey, Jerry, go ahead.
Yeah, question. I don't have an electric car, but my curiosity is a couple of things because I'm involved with Lexington Center and Lexington and those stations that went in downtown, the extra ones. So I was just curious regarding the Temple's installation. Did they use Eversource or NSTAR's money to get ready for other stations too? Did they lay the groundwork for infrastructure for other stations?
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, Scott, can I just ask, would you mind just stop sharing just so we'll all be a little bit bigger on the screen?
Yep.
Thank you. Jerry, the quick answer on that is yes. We did actually have the wiring installed for up to 6 charging stations. So that would give us a total of 12 charging, charging points. 12 cars could be charged simultaneously, with the idea being that we'd see how it goes, the success of this first one, what the demand is. As we said, the installed base of electric vehicles right now is still pretty low. So as that grows, we are well positioned with the wiring and the infrastructure in place to be able to grow along with it. And we can add, 1, 2, 3, 4, any amount of stations that we feel we need as we go.
That's good to hear because we did the same thing at Lexington Center too.
Really?
Extra, although there was like in the lot behind our store, although there are 3, I think we did it for the next amount more. Maybe Scott might even know that stuff. Because we originally started in the NSTAR lot and then we did the depot lot and the lot behind our store. And we're looking for, because again, 5 years from now, it could be a whole different story.
Just some numbers for people. In the United States last year, I think 3% of the vehicles that were purchased were electric. In the UK, I just got this report yesterday. In the month of December, 25% of the vehicles that were purchased were electric. And in Norway, this is a country that actually makes gas, right? They make their own gas. They put incredible incentives towards electric cars. Last year, 80% of the vehicles that were purchased were electric.
Wow.
So we are not in the United States. We're not in front of the power curve here. We're quite behind. but the expectation, and you hear all the vehicle manufacturers are committing all their future R&D, their future cars to electric. This is coming, and I am positive that by the time, 5-7 years rolls along, there's going to be a huge need for those additional stations at Amuna. It's a great thing that we were able to include the cost of that additional trenching in the cost that was picked up.
Great. Hal?
So when we talk about the future, whenever this future is here, and we have self-driving cars, the rabbi is going to be able to get into his car at his house and come to shul in his car, in his self-driving car. And all you have to do is fix it up so it'll plug in automatically. Years ago, Tesla had this device that they claimed would plug your car in automatically. I don't think it really ever hit the ground, but I think people who don't drive their cars on Shabbos will be able to come to shul in a self-driving car.
That's a great point, Hal. There actually was some discussion about the fact that I think, don't quote me, but I believe halachically an electric vehicle is actually, I don't know if the right word is better, but more in keeping with halacha than
Yes.
a internal
Yes.
combustion car, because there's no spark required. And anyway, there is an argument to be made that those who are driving electric vehicles are more in keeping with the law. Who knows?
At least
One
they're
Sephardic
helping the
rabbi in
environment.
Florida- One Sephardic rabbi in Florida said he gave his congregation the right to come to shul on Shabbos in an electric vehicle, in a self-driving electric vehicle.
Alan,
Very cool.
would it be a good idea, just as an idea, to give anyone who works at the temple like free electricity just because they're an employee of the temple? Could, some companies do that for employees, and it might be nice that a temple employee might be thrilled to have an electric car of some type.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Jeff. My understanding, I believe that Ravi Tal said at the moment, I don't think any employees have an electric vehicle. If I may be mistaken, but I think she may have said that. She was involved in the conversations about the rate setting and felt that if we charged staff the same rate as members, that seemed like a good way to start. But it's a good question, and I think as we continue to evaluate our pricing and the model for how this works, that it's certainly something we could consider if we want to offer an additional benefit / incentive for staff to purchase an electric vehicle and further benefit the environment. So it's also a good question.
It could be incentive because one could buy like a Chevy Volt. It's not a Tesla, it doesn't cost $50,000, but one could buy a used car secondhand for say $9,000. And if they didn't have enough money to buy a new Tesla, $9,000 is a good average price for a good car. And if they thought they didn't have to pay money to charge it when they went to work, maybe they'll work for the temple a really long time.
Yeah, interesting point. Could be good all around. Incentive and retention and a whole host of things, and the
And
environment.
the stations can do it. We can set up a 3-tier pricing scenario if we wanted to. So.
Yeah, they still would have the charge point card. It's just that it would come up at $0.
Yeah, interesting question. I will say, Jeff, we really set out to both in terms of installing the station and in terms of operating it, to not have the temple bear any costs. That we really wanted to keep it as neutral as possible. So there might have to be some discussion and something like that, an incentive kind of program that would have a cost for staff. It doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, but again, at this stage, the thinking was let's keep it as neutral as possible from a cost standpoint, and hopefully keep it easier.
Yeah.
So, Jerry.
Yeah, just again, more curiosity questions. Maintenance fees, as it with anything, there's maintenance, but is that all on ChargePoint, or is that
There's actually,
on us?
there's actually no maintenance associated with it. The warranty is a year on the product, so if something goes wrong within the first year, we replace it at no charge. But there's really nothing you have to do. Those stations in Lexington have been sitting there for a long time, and it's really an electrical circuit, so it's not not a big deal.
And
One
you need
could
like
consider-
insurance in case it gets smashed for some reason? Powerful.
Yeah, that's a good question. If it gets smashed, I would imagine that the temple's insurance, whatever we have, would cover something of that, but that's something that we didn't look into. You'll notice in pictures that there are these two protective bollards in front of it. So
Right.
very hard for someone to go in and smash them. They'd really have to hit it incredibly hard to do that. And with the solar things, I don't think you could even get up to enough speed to do that inside that area.
Is there a security camera on that points towards the charge point?
Oh, I no, there's none on the charge point, and I don't think there's a security camera that looks over it. Is there, Alan?
That's a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that.
So
Something
that
we
would
can
be a
look
good one
into.
because let's say somebody drove off with it by accident, like they left it plugged in. You might be able to do that with certain cars. That's a pretty expensive item. And then at least you'd know who drove off with a $1,000 item by accident.
You actually can't. The car will not operate if it's plugged in. No car will operate if it's plugged in. They're all set up that way.
Oh, okay.
I have some interesting stories about that when I was trying to leave with a mayor of a city and the car wouldn't move. And I'm like, what's the matter with this car? And I didn't realize it was still plugged in. So it was actually doing the way it should. So we've never had a situation where someone pulled off. The only situation we've had with that is if somebody was plugged in and for some reason, somebody next to it caught the cord somehow. But that has happened so rarely. And in the situation it's in right there, it couldn't happen. I will mention that there's a cord management built into the system. So those cords never touch the ground. In some cases where they don't have these cord management systems, the cords end up on the ground and get all dirty and grimy. These cords never touch the ground. So you literally don't have to worry about coiling cords. It always stays kind of neat and stays that way. So there's a lot of thought put into the design.
It probably would be a good idea to have a camera on it just in case some not too bright thief decides to cut it off and, doesn't get electrocuted and then disappears with it. But there probably wouldn't be any disadvantage to a camera pointed towards it.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, Jeff. We can certainly look into that if that's something doable. We can work with the security committee on that. And it's another benefit actually of the solar canopies is that it does provide infrastructure for installing cameras. So there's an opportunity there as well.
One little piece of trivia that applies towards maintenance is the plugs themselves are engineered to only last for 10,000 insertions into a car. And something in the charger counts that and will turn that cord off when it hits 10,000. Of course, at one time a day, 10,000 insertions is 27 years. So it's not a big problem. It's trivia.
Larry, I can tell you our charging stations don't have a mentality that they're counting charges and they shut off after any number of charges. So I
Okay.
don't know where you got that.
Well, my charger, the Toyota supplied, has a life of 10,000 insertions.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. No, we don't.
Jerry.
Yeah, I'll try it again. I
Yeah.
was just curious, when you talk about figuring out the users and the out-of-towners, does the charge point data supply zip codes, for example? So you can understand if it's mostly out-of-towners who are using it?
It does actually.
Yeah.
So we actually, and it's interesting because I did some work for the city of Lexington to show where people were coming from to come to Lexington. And it was unbelievable. They were coming from all over the state and New Hampshire and Vermont, and were parking at that station in those stations in downtown Lexington. And we can do the same analysis on ours to see how far people are coming from.
Scott, I'd love to talk to you offline out of this meeting about some of the stuff and about different data regarding this stuff, because we were always looking for the next thing downtown there. So maybe I can grab your email sometime.
Yeah, there's a ton. I mean, there's a ton of data that is kept on all those stations. Every vehicle that ever went there, how long they spent, all this stuff, how much money was collected, if you're collecting money, all that stuff. So
Yeah, I don't want to bog down this meeting with it, but yeah, I'd love to talk with you offline.
fantastic. Scott.miller@chargepoint.com. That's how you can reach me.
Thank you.
Scott, one more question. If you drop that charge cable on the ground, you said it had a good retraction system. Does it bring it back into the box or does it leave it on the ground?
You can't. Oh, if you actually take the thing and drop it on the ground, no, it won't bring it up. The expectation is that someone will take it from their car and plug it back into the station itself, so that doesn't. But if you leave it on the ground, which I in the old days when people had the coil system. They always did. In these
Yep.
days, we very, very rarely see anything on the ground. People just know, they take it out and put it into the place. It's
But
very,
if they did put it on the ground, will it stay on the ground or will it get retracted?
it will stay on the ground.
I see, yeah, because I saw the ones that they had at MIT. If you put it on the ground by accident or you got a phone call, then it's got to stay on the ground and then it could get run over by the next car.
Yep. But they do tests on those cords and on those connectors they actually do run over tests. So they have vehicles that run over those to make sure that they won't crack. It's not a situation you want to get yourself into, but they do those tests.
That was the reason I was thinking of for the camera, because if somebody left it on the ground, at least you could, if it didn't work anymore, you could call them and say, hey, you were the last person to use it. We're just giving you a friendly phone call. And that might save the temple $1,000.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting point. We really should look into that. Good. Any other questions? Hal?
And now, just a comment, guys, thank you very much, really, for doing this. Really terrific. And I think it was a phenomenal idea. You did it 8 days after putting it online. You had the brief Milah. I'm not asking the details, but it was really very good.
Thank you.
And Hal and I go way back. He invited me to speak at a couple of his classes on electric vehicles, and I had a chance to speak with the students. It was a blast to do it, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.
Well, thank you all for joining. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay.